Howdy all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Brainscan. If I could even, in my brain, think of what the title of this movie is. Brainscan, a video game themed movie. As people would possibly know, because you could go through any number of things, I like video game movies. Ready Player One is to still be kind of my all time favorite film. Uh, and so when going into this film, it's like, okay, like this is to have a video gamed theme, but like I can immediately see where this film is going. Because once you kind of see the trailer, you're just like, I know where this film's going. Because we end up kind of tossing words around like hypnotic or stuff like that, and I'm just like, oh, okay, I know where this is heading. And so the thing that I would say about people wanting to check this movie out after I talk about it, there actually is to be like strobe lighting in a part of this film when the game is to start here. So if you kind of easily get seizures because of strobe lighting or whatever thing is to deal with any kind of things with strobe lighting that has anything to do with you, then you would probably have to just kind of shut your eyes during a portion of this film when they start the game and go into much more dialogue. But any other time, I would easily say check this movie out. It's only an hour and a half, so it's like 2 hours long, and there's this huge complicated process. This movie actually is a pretty simple film. The Trickster character is just kind of very much a goofy character that just kind of feels very rando. It kind of feels like if they could have remade this movie now and put a real effort into it. Like, this movie just is to be weird, goofy, and whatever. And it's like, man, if this movie actually, if they rebooted it and put some serious cash into this, like, man, this would be a really cool movie uh, that hopefully doesn't go the exact same way as the original. But I think you could still do this and have a ton of fun, like approaching this kind of film. Because I had fun watching this film. I had fun going into this. And it is kind of funny that I'd watch this movie because there is to be a certain scene in this film where I'm like, oh my god, I've technically seen this movie before and did not realize it. Because there is this whole scene that I'll talk about here where we have our main character, Michael, who talks about having mono. And I'm like, oh my god, I've seen this movie before and I didn't even realize it. Because, like, there is to be whichever Edward Furlong, who, of course, was in, like, Terminator 2 and as the John Connor in that movie. He, I think, was doing, or he had done a Pet Cemetery movie, which I think was, like, consistently, like, circling or surfacing, like, on TV, like, a lot during the exact same time that evidently this movie was to also have been on TV. And so when I was kind of flipping around certain channels when kind of it was a lesser streaming time of millennia, I stumbled upon this movie and I just thought it was Pet Cemetery. So I'm like, I'm not gonna watch this. I'm not gonna watch Pet Cemetery because that's what I naturally thought it was. So I guess not. So, but now that I realize it's like, man. Also, I watched the most out of context scene of what this movie actually was. Man, that's gotta to have sucked to have the one scene that could not have told me what this movie actually was, which was a video game movie. If I would have saw any video game movie part of this, I probably would have actually watched it. But oh well. Uh, we have this trickster guy that is to be kind of very much a randomly put together character, but he's to be this kind of goofy Ash like character that is to, of course, uh, force an incentive for our characters to do what they are supposed to do within their game. And so, going into this film is honestly really simple. It's a really simple film. They toss out words like hypnotic, or they toss out words like interactive game, and so like immediately you might understand some things here and there about this video game. I would say that this is a very like unique experience um, when going into this film. I honestly wish that stuff like this would have like been done more often. Like I wish that there could have been a whole. If they probably would have kind of nixed the goofy name, if they probably would have like went back into here and re-put this out there and just maybe called it something different, freaking people would probably just be clamoring for this movie just because it has a video game element. It also has uh, a reasonable like idea or concept of like having an interactive game. Like how many people will have wanted to play like virtual reality kind of stuff now, and so on and so forth. There's so many games that are out there, or so many movies that are out there that are maybe quasi similar to this, like Beta Test, uh, which is kind of a video game movie. I say that, but there's probably also a plethora of movies possibly called Beta Test. Um, but there's a video game one that we find out like a guy is actually going off and killing people in the real world. And well, yeah. So going in this movie, I think that's all that I wanted to say about this film. I may not exactly be uh, going in perfectly to say who is to be every single person's character, just because there seems to have, of course, not been a perfect lineup for everything, but I'm going to try to do the best that I can. If I mess something up, I apologize, but otherwise, I think it's about that time to go into spoilers about this movie. Let's go out of our way to see this, say that we've seen this film because I have. And so let's go into that double five time territory and let's go into this thing called spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about that time again to spoil this movie. The Trickster character, way too freaking random. Where could you go out of your way to say that you've seen this film before I absolutely leave? I think Google search will tell you to probably go into Vudu, VUDU, or in Amazon to rent this film. I had used an app called Letter C Movies, so C Movies. You can again Google search this if I didn't say that already, and Google search the app, not the movie, and you should be able to hopefully find that app and eventually download it and basically see not only this movie but plenty of other brand new releases that came out. Stuff that seems very rare for you to dare say be able to see you can see it on this app there. There's other certain kind of apps that I would probably recommend. You may, at some point in time, maybe seeing Brainscan on there, but probably won't be there now. You can go and Google search apps like Fox HD Movies and find a logo that'll say Fox HD Movies, but the title will say something different. It'll probably say like Play 1080p HD Movies, whatever. Or you can go into possibly like TV Crushes, or like there's a number of apps that I've pretty much dare in fact said over time that you can go into any video and pretty much see that I've consistently mentioned things to people. So now, complete spoilers and utterly spoilers. So, very beginning of the film, we have both Michael and Kyle talking over seemingly a TV'd phone call that isn't very like Skype-esh, uh, because Michael is to have this voice recognition phone that weirdly has this Igor character on it, and so it seems like we have some kind of bizarrish technology here at some points in this movie that is to kind of make this one of a kind, but is to probably make it one of a kind during a certain time period. But hey, so Michael is to call Kyle uh through this weird TV phone call that just has pictures of Kyle consistently being placed. And so, but we also actually see Kyle at his home talking to Michael, not via like a FaceTime or Skype or whatever. We just kind of just like there is also a camera inside Kyle's home while Kyle is talking. So Michael is to talk to Kyle, and Kyle is to mention about this new game named Brainscan. And so Michael is hesitant. He's like, dude, I've played everything. Like, I've done everything. Like, I've watched every movie. There's nothing that, like, you can have me go and do or see or whatever that I haven't seen 100 times already. So Kyle is like, hey man, go and play the game and like then kind of lend me the discs, right? Lend me the like give me the game. So Michael is like, okay, I'll see about it. So Michael is to go and buy the game because he's to call like 1-800-555-FEAR, weirdly enough. And so we have our character who is to supposedly. I'm gonna charge my tablet here. We have our main character going and calling this 1-800 number, and so that all of a sudden is to then have this disc being delivered to Michael's home, and I'm like, what is this, like a console thing? Like if we were to do this now, like there would just be a code downloaded or whatever, some goofy thing now. Which again would just be kind of interesting to see, like if they were to modernize this movie, because it feels like a technology film, but not quite, because it was done like what 94. Wow, that doesn't seem far too off. But man, it just seems like a far off film. Um, but it's 94. Wow, that's surprising. So, because that's like what, like 20 carry the 6, to be almost 30 some odd years ago, because I'm rounding up because I'm lazy. So, uh, so Michael goes on and gets this Brainscan game through the mail, and so he decides like, all right, I'm gonna go and check this out. So And this movie feels very much like Existenz, which you don't know uh, what's real and what's fake and what's whatever. And so, like, and I think I've also kind of seen a number of kind of movies that have toted that line that I think I've reviewed at some point. Like, Stay Alive kind of has that feeling where it's like, you die in the game, you die for real. And I always kind of mention those kind of games as extends and stuff like that when I'm just doing a video game stuff. So I think there is like a whole playlist of like video game themed movies. So go ahead and check that out. You can kind of see a barrage or a cool, interesting list of like video games that you probably never heard of, video game movies. So, or probably a lot of them you're just like, I've heard every single one of these. So Michael is to go and is to download the code of this game. He's to get the early access pre-ordered thing. So Michael gets this game. He is to put the disc in, and so he is, of course, to press start. And the game is to allow him a certain number of playing time. So he's like, okay, this is interesting. So when the game starts, there's to be this like flashing, and I'm like, man, I just can't wait for eventually someone to have seizure. And Kyle is to at some point in this movie tell Michael that evidently one person was to eventually have a seizure. I'm like, well, yeah, you would think, right? So Michael goes on and starts playing the game, and so now he is to now we are to basically get like a first person perspective of what's going on through whoever the killer is. So now the killer is to be at this house, and so the killer is to make his way in, and we consistently have this trickster character, this narrator, that is consistently telling Michael what to do, as if he's weirdly his consciousness or something like that. So Michael, of course, is feeling that this game is just so real and so intense and so on and so forth. So Michael is to go on into this house and see that there is a man there. And so the goal of the game that the trickster is to mention, it's like, well, hey, like, make sure you don't leave any evidence or any witnesses, and like try and kill and like get the heck out of there. So, and also collect a trophy. Weirdly, I don't know why there's this trophy thing that Michael consistently has to get, but I guess it just, the trophy is to prove that what is to happen, so to speak, because we're going to get to an interesting part here. So Michael is to see this guy sleeping, and he's tossing and turning, and so the trickster is telling Michael, do it, and so Michael goes and stabs this guy in the back, and he wakes up and he's like flipping and flopping and flailing around. And so Michael, of course, is to go in and stab this guy numerous times again to kill him off. And then Michael is to then go and chop this guy's foot off as a souvenir, memento, or otherwise, hey, here's a foot. So after that moment, Michael is to awaken from the game that has unhypnotized him. So Michael is like, wow, that game was so intense, and he's like salivating and he's like sweating, and he probably farted. I don't know. He might have had a silent but deadly. So Michael just feels so great about this game, and so Michael is to go and get a message from his father that he is still away on business and he'll be back in a couple days. And Michael is to hear that his father is like, well, hey, son, like, I love you. And, like, I hate these messages, or, like, these message machines, they suck, so on and so forth. And so, the one thing that I didn't talk about, because I skipped right away to the whole, like, video game thing, because I think that's the most important. Let's get to some backstory. Let's get to some kind of preemptive stuff here. Meaning the stuff that happens early in the movie that I didn't really care about, because all that really matters is the game, right? So, the very beginning of the film, we are to see that Michael is to have these horrible dreams, flashing back to a car accident that him and his mother were in, where sadly enough, Michael's mother was to die, and Michael was to have to go into a hospital to get his knee uh, rebuilt, basically, because within this car accident, it seemed that Michael was to have his knee completely just blown out, I guess. So, Michael is to wake up in a cold sweat, I guess, with scars all over his knee, showcasing that it's like, yeah, like this character was to have been that younger kid. So, Michael is to go to school and is to put together this horror club where Michael is to put together a movie that he had found called Death, 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 and it's part two. So Michael goes and shows this to a bunch of his horror club members, and so all of a sudden, Dr. Fromberg, who is to technically be, I guess, the principal of this school, is to be going in and seeing that Michael is showing these kids this movie called Death, Death, Death. And so Fromberg is to be just kind of upset, or to not really like grasp what is kind of going on here. So Fromberg tells Michael, hey, you know what? How about you go and you give me the movie that you're going to show to this club, and if I can handle it, then I will go and I will let your club see this movie. Meaning that more than likely this club is never going to have a meeting ever again, because this guy will probably never allow any kind of movie to be seen in this horror club. Here's a story that I have. So I was in school, and I had a really good friend. I think a really good friend that I don't remember the name clearly of. Like, I want to say this guy's name is Charlie, because I think his name was Charlie. So me and this guy, like, we were like guys who were at some point we played football, because we were like, I did sports for school up until a certain point, until my knees couldn't like handle doing sports, so I just kind of like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that anymore. um But yeah, me and this guy would just be consistently in this algebra class, and he would consistently go and bring this like portable DVD player in, and we would just consistently see movies while we're doing stuff in class, because we would always get our like our homework done like super quick. To our teacher was like, are you sure you guys are all done? And we would like show him the paperwork, and he's like, oh yeah, like, wow, that guy, that must have took you like 10, 20 minutes and you guys were you banged that all out, and we're just like, yeah, this is really easy. And he's like, oh, good, like great, like you guys are just gonna like pick this up. And I'm like, yeah. So me and Charlie would watch like movies all the time in class. All of a sudden, one day, he ends up bringing in like Freddy versus Jason, and I told him, I'm like, isn't that a little inappropriate for you to be watching in here? And Charlie was just like, well, no, like, no, I think it's fine. And I'm like, like, hey, man, like I'm not gonna get in trouble. I'm not gonna like I'm not gonna risk it. Like you go and you watch this movie, and I'm just gonna do my computer stuff, and you just do whatever you want. Cause like we had some like it was math class, but it was like computer lab. Like man, like my algebra teacher was like really just so cool, and plus also uh like we were teenagers at this point. Like I'm sure the teacher was just like, hey guys, do whatever you want, I don't care. But like I was also just like, man, I'm not a part of this. Like I'm not watching this movie. We just had Charlie who just kept bringing in this portable DVD player, and I was just waiting for somebody to just commandeer this or just like, I'm sorry, you can't watch this in class. Because hey, like I wasn't gonna say anything. Like, hey, we could watch movies or whatever. Because like we got our homework done like so quickly done, and like every single day was just like, okay, we have like X amount of time to just like waste. So we would just kind of quickly watch some like I think episode of The Simpsons or something. Like that's usually what we do or something like that. It would always be some kind of whatever thing, some random thing, because he would just have random discs of stuff. So like he had this joke weirdly because he saw this one movie called Dumb and Dumber or Dumb and Dumberer where uh God, what was it? The guy who was the father on Full House was to go into the. It's the one bathroom scene where he's like Bob Saget, where he's like, "There's all over the walls, all over the ceiling." But the way he would say it would like get me laughing every single time. But like the way the movie presented it, like wasn't as funny as how he did it. But anyways, pushing on. I'm wasting time. I apologize. So, but it was just a little. It's a little funny story about me and just watching movies during class because class is usually pretty boring, and sometimes I would often just kind of just doze off because classes are boring. A lot of movies that they teach you in the later years of high school, boring. But luckily, I graduated. It happens. So, pushing on. So now Michael is to go to Kimberly's house because it seems that he's going to kind of get up the courage to ask her out. Because Kyle is to tell Michael, it's like, hey man, ask her out. Like, come on, man, she's having a party. And basically, she's just like, she's begging to just like, to want to be yours kind of thing. And so Michael's like, I don't know, as Kimberly has every single one of her windows open and consistently is a girl that disrobes in front of her windows, consistently, perfectly, like showcasing some things here and there through this window, hoping, I guess, Michael would probably be watching for whatever reason. So Michael is to go to Kimberly's house, and all of a sudden, Kimberly's parents are watching the news, and so Michael is to also be watching the news, waiting for Kimberly. And so all of a sudden, there's a news report saying that some guy had been murdered, had been stabbed, and that his foot had gone missing. And this guy who had died, I guess, was Mr. Tebb, I guess was his name. I believe it was. I could be wrong about that. People can confirm that by watching the film. Uh, and they can be like, no, his name was Martin or Phil or Steve, whatever. So it won't matter after this point, but like, hey, it's always good to reconfirm things. So Michael is to now scramble back to his house to watch the rest of this news report to, I guess, find out if they found any evidence or any kind of anything. And so Michael is to rethink of what had happened during the game. And so when Michael is to have chopped his foot off, the narrator, who is the trickster, is to tell Michael, like, put this somewhere that's safe. And so the only place I guess Michael could think was a safe place to put this foot was his refrigerator. So Michael opens his refrigerator to find this foot there, and he's like, oh my god. So Michael decides that he's like, well, hey, I'm going to go and I'm going to take this foot and I'm going to bury it into this forest. But it seems that there is to have been a dog that is to be strolling through this forest with this police officer. And so Michael is like, oh, crap. Well, like, I guess I can't have this foot be, like, dug into this forest. And so, because the dog ends up digging it back out and is to hold it in its mouth. So Michael goes and is to take the foot away from this dog and just try to hide out. So the police officer is just going with this dog, and so the dog is to just head into Michael's direction, and Michael's like, you know what, dog, like, I'll never ask you for anything again, but if you do me this one solid by getting the heck away from here, like, I'd really appreciate it. So the dog ends up leaving, and he's like, oh, thank God, like, they're going a different direction. So now Michael is to, of course, try and call like this game, or like the game developers, and I guess try to figure this whole thing out, which eventually ends us with this character who is to be called the Trickster, who is to appear from outside of the TV screen to come as some, I'm guessing, hologram like character of sorts, because this character doesn't seem to be much of a real character. So this Trickster is to weirdly come out of the TV screen, and so all the Trickster cares about is that Michael is to go and get the next disc to play the next part of the game. Weirdly, this has to have a installment kind of thing going on to it, but the Trickster is to tell Michael that he has to go and get the next disc to play more of the game. And so it even gets to a point where Michael is to go and take the disc that he finds and breaks it, but the Trickster just keeps coming up with discs anyways for Michael to forcibly still continue to play this game because he has to. So supposedly the Trickster is to tell Michael that there was to be one witness to Michael's murder. And so the Trickster is to also tell Michael that technically the Trickster is also a witness to this murder, but the Trickster will never tell anyone or never confess that Michael is to have killed this person, no matter what they do, no matter if they break all of the Trickster's fingers, which the Trickster breaks his own fingers to just kind of prove that this guy doesn't feel any pain. He goes and like pokes out his own eyes to just pull his fingers back out to have his eyes reform and just make it seem like this character is to be invincible. And so the Trickster is to go and tell Michael, like, hey, get the next disc and play the next part of the game. So Michael is to get the next disc, and so this time around we're starting to see this slightly different from the original variation of how this game was played, because we're starting to see it from a different camera angle or different approach, and so on and so forth. Because the second time around we don't actually see the gameplay, we just see the story after the fact kind of thing. And then the other times that we're to have the game, it's to basically be where Michael is just kind of performing these tasks, and we're to understand this. That like he's basically playing the game and he's being hypnotized and whichever. So Michael is to go and tell the Trickster that he's going to play this game for the cops, and the Trickster's like, go ahead, and do this, play the game for the cops. So Michael goes and documents or records this whole game session, and because Michael doesn't know if he's the killer or not, like he just thinks it's some random guy that actually killed these people. So Michael is to tell this camcorder that, hey, like I'm Michael, and I've been playing this game, and it's a game about killing, and I don't know if I'm the murderer or not, but in this game, but if I am, then here's my confession. And so Michael goes on to, after the game session is over, which Michael doesn't really seem to remember anything. Michael goes and watches back the footage. And so it seems when there was to be this kind of loading up scenario, we find that Michael was to leave his seat and go off to play the game. So Michael is to then realize, he's like, oh my god, I was actually the killer. And so we find that Michael is to go and look into his fridge to realize that I guess the witness was Kyle. Because Kyle had went to Michael's house, and Kyle's like, well, hey man, why aren't you why aren't you at school? And Michael is just to make up an excuse after the first kind of video game thing that made him decide to just take some time off of school, that he's probably going to actually be a murderer, and so he decided to just call in sick and say that he had mono and he's going to be out for a while. So we also had Kimberly kind of stop by when Michael was to get killed off, and Kimberly was to give Michael his mail, but also give him like homework for that week because he was gone. So Kimberly is to talk to Michael to just kind of get his thoughts about Kyle being dead. And So come to find out in a newspaper article, we find out that Kimberly had used Michael's words against him for some news article, which was like a horrible thing to do, but I guess she figured that Michael would not have even noticed that. So Michael goes on to kind of make Kimberly kind of leave his house one way or another, and then he smashes the brain scan game, because when he sees the brain scan uh, package, he just gets upset, and then Kimberly is to, of course, leave afterwards, and Michael goes and breaks the disc, going up into his room, and the trickster is like, well, hey, why aren't you playing the game? There's still things that you need to do. And so, because I don't think that there's a witness, I think that the next thing is to go and remove a clue off the board. And so we also have a detective who's called Detective Hayden, who is to be putting together this case. And so Detective Hayden is to kind of slowly but surely start to see Michael. It's like, you know what? I think there's something about this kid. Uh, and so Detective Hayden is to make his way to Michael's house and just start to ask him questions about him and Kyle, because Michael had called Kyle's house and was to see if Kyle was still alive, and Detective Hayden had answered, and so Michael had hung up the phone. So Detective Hayden had gone on to Michael's house to ask him about Kyle because they were good friends. And so Detective Hayden is to ask Michael, it's like, hey, like your voice sounds really familiar. Like, have I seen you before? And Michael's like, no, you haven't seen me before. So Detective Hayden, is to uh, go on and notice that it seemed there was to be ashes in Michael's fire for whatever reason, as if he had burnt something there. Because Michael had burnt something there. It was the foot that was in the forest. He took that and he torched it. And Detective Hayden goes back later into Michael's house to get a sample of those ashes to go and test to see what it was that had burnt, or maybe that there might have been a DNA thing out of this. So, because when they go and they leave the house, we have Hayden and his partner realize that there were ashes in the fireplace, and so they're kind of trying to put two and two together there. And but then they end up driving off. So Michael has to go and just erase some clue that is to lead them to him, because there are to have been footprints that Michael had left at a certain spot that were to kind of give him away, because he is to, of course, have a limp because of his knee, and there were to be footprints kind of leading up to this certain house that he had killed in, that you could obviously tell there uh, were kind of footprints of a limped person. So Detective Hayden, considering people are starting to get killed here, Detective Hayden is to have a bunch of people in town uh, do like a neighborhood watch kind of thing, And so Michael is to go through here and just be like, yeah, I'm not going to kill anymore. I'm not going to kill anyone. I'm just going to erase this clue and I'll get out of here scot-free. So this time in this game, Michael is to like not even go into the fact of the whole hypnotic thing and whatever. We just have Michael who seems to just kind of walk out there, and we actually just see Michael just kind of supposedly playing this game, but it just looks like Michael is just kind of like no longer doing the game. He's just actually just here in this scenario. So like, we went from first person to now third person, and now we're just seeing Michael as Michael just kind of doing these tasks. So while Michael is to try and get rid of this clue, there is to be a phone call from a concerned citizen, which was to just be the Trickster, warning somebody that Michael is out prowling around. So what happens is Michael is to accidentally kill somebody by having them uh, like get drop something upon them, which kind of like because of the weight of this item, they end up getting, of course, crushed and killed. And so Michael's like, God, I didn't want to kill anybody, and so Michael goes off into the neighborhood, and so the police are just kind of going through and combing through this place. And so there was to be this random guy coming through the parts of this neighborhood with a gun in hand. And so the police, seeing this guy with a gun in hand, shot him. And so everybody is thinking that this random guy was to have been the killer. And so Michael goes off and is to try to like sneak back into his home without anyone noticing, cause witness. And so Michael is to bump into this one guy who's to ask this kid. It's like, hey kid, what are you doing? Like, shouldn't you be at home? So like maybe you should scramble, kid, because they caught the killer. Like the killer's over there. And so like this is what this guy is saying to Michael, that he should kind of get along home now because there's a dead body over there. So Michael makes his way to his house, to all of a sudden having Kimberly going, Michael, Michael, is that you? And so now Kimberly ends up becoming the next witness. So Michael finishes up the game, and we don't even have a time where he pauses when he sits down to like kind of unbuffer or unload or whatever, so that way he can like be kind of seeming like it's a game. So Michael is now talking to the Trickster, and he is to mention like, hey, you promised I wouldn't kill anybody. And the Trickster is just like, well, hey, like things got out of hand, you got sloppy and you killed somebody. Like, hey, it was either him or you, and you chose you, so like that's your fault. So like this wasn't like a stealth mission, people were bound to die anyways. So now the Trickster is to mention, it's like, well, hey man, you still have one mission to go, because guess what, there was another witness, and guess who that is. And Michael's like, oh my god, like Kimberly was the witness, and now he's forced to have to kill her off to win the game. So Michael is just kind of like, he's kind of dragging his feet, putting and doing this game to finishing it up because he doesn't want to kill Kimberly. And so Michael decides to go into the game, and so Michael is to head, of course, to Kimberly's house. And so Michael goes to Kimberly's place, and Kimberly, of course, wakes up. And Michael has a huge hesitation about wanting to kill Kimberly, and he really doesn't want to go through with it. So he starts going and battling with the Trickster, trying to stab or trying to kill the Trickster. The Trickster consumes Michael, and then we have like the Trickster slash Michael, like kind of very weird, goofy-ish, like Michael Trickster thing here. And so the Trickster now inside Michael is going to go and kill Kimberly. But Kimberly stops Michael by telling him, like, Michael, whatever you have done, like I don't care because I love you, Michael. I've loved you, and so, and Kimberly's, I don't care if you've murdered anybody, I don't care what you've done, like I love you, and so Michael, of course, is to just kind of drop this knife, and like the trickster just realizes that there's nothing he can do to persuade Michael to kill Kimberly. And so now we have it to where reasonably, like, the trickster is to basically say, it's like, well, hey, like, game over, you lose because you won't kill Kimberly. So the trickster ends up opening this door for Detective Hayden to just kind of walk in. And so Detective Hayden is calling Michael a murderer. And so Michael's like, oh my god, Detective Hayden, he's here. And so Detective Hayden ends up shooting Michael. And so all of a sudden, Michael is to go on and wake up from this game, uh, like as if like this is like Total Recall, where we don't know if this game was real or fake or whatever. And so Michael wakes up, and so Michael, I guess, thinks that all of this was some dream or some kind of something. And so all of a sudden now Michael is to try and see if everyone is still alive. All of a sudden Kyle is to appear at Michael's place, and so Michael is to go on and hug Kyle like, oh my god, you're still alive? And Kyle's like, yeah, still been alive for a number of years now. So Michael is to also go and like realize that Kimberly is tossing this party, and because this is like days before any of this game really happened, because it's all in that same first like night out before Michael was to go and kill anyone. So Michael and Kyle go to Kimberly's party to, I guess, have Kyle mix it up with Kimberly's friend. And so Michael goes off to find Kimberly and is to ask her out. And so Kimberly's like, you know what, maybe I'll go out with you. Like, you know, like I might, like I'm kind of leaning on yes, but I don't know. And so Kimberly just kind of walks off to continue going on and kind of doing this party, and then so all of a sudden Michael is to go and kind of thumb through Kimberly's stuff to see if that Kimberly was the same Kimberly in the video game, and Michael finds out that Kimberly had been taking photos of Michael, because supposedly Michael had been doing the same to her, where Kimberly would consistently keep like disrobing in front of the window, hoping that Michael would eventually be looking out to see what she's doing. And so that was kind of the early parts of this movie where we would have, of course, Kyle who's like, "Hey, did you see like Kimberly tonight? Like, how far did she go?" So yeah, so Michael has realized, yeah, like Kimberly does really like me like this, and she's like, so this is gonna like really work out. So the way of which that this movie is to end. Oh, we also had the moment when right after Kyle was to die in this film, Kyle was to go and have a petition being signed for them to re put together the horror club, and they had gotten quite a few signatures, and supposedly Kimberly was one of them. And so Kimberly ends up going and giving this paper to Michael. What a coincidence, right? To perfectly just say like, yeah, like Kyle was to be Michael's best friend, because Michael was to have a falling out with Kyle because Kyle was to desperately want that new game, because Kyle was continually asking for it, and Michael's like, well, yeah, let me just get another like level of it and just see how it goes. And so now that Michael is to find out that he had killed people, like he wasn't gonna go off and give this game to Kyle, and so Kyle is giving Michael the finger and all kinds of stuff, but we ultimately find out that these characters are good friends. And so in the end, I think that's all that really matters. And so Michael is to go back to school and go and find his Frongberg, and is to tell Fromberg, hey, like, I'm going to go and present this game to my class, and so of course you have to go and go through everything, and so Fromberg is to go and get the disc of Brainscan, and so the teacher is like, "Oh, okay," like, or the principal is just like, "Oh, okay, I'll look this over," and so all of a sudden we end up having Trickster on the principal's desk, and he's looking at him, and he's like, "Ah, like bravo, bravo, you did it." So, because the Trickster is this showcase that he at some point is to be Michael, like the darker part of Michael that like really you don't actually get to see uh besides like when he is to go and watch a scary movie or is to kind of play a very violent game and so on and so forth. So it really comes interesting when the Trickster ends up emerging with with Michael to have the Trickster being tempted to kill Kimberly, but then he can't go through with it. So, with that said, I think that covers most of the movie. Like, I don't think there is much that happens after Michael is to go and find out that Kimberly is to have taken photos of him. I would have liked for that person to kind of come out of the shadows and him being killed off. I would have actually, I think, would have kind of like could have put the cherry on top of the cake or ice cream or whatever. They could have possibly had the one random guy come out of the shadows and had it be Michael's father. That would have been a cool, like, oh my god kind of moment where Michael would have been like, oh my god, that's my dad. And because we don't know when Michael's dad was eventually going to come home and so on and so forth. So that would have been an interesting part of that story. That would have been an interesting addition to this story that would have made it just like, oh my god. So, uh, anything else that I possibly would have changed about this movie? Like, again, like, I would probably change, like, all that mattered was the game. Nothing else mattered. Like, really, I guess there wasn't much to do with any of these characters. uh, but I don't know. They could have spiced something up. They could have gone and um, like even Detective Hayden was just kind of like, meh. Like this guy is like he's really smart and he's kind of really observant or whatever. But like I guess he's a good enough villain. But I don't know. Like there was a lot of characters that just kind of felt very flat to me, and like that kind of happens all around. We have a goofy character, goofy sadistic character that almost has like a sideshow Bob kind of weird kind of look to him. Um, which I don't know. I think they could like if they were to again kind of redo this for today. I could see like a number of visuals that could have like drastically changed from today to whatever this was. So, because like this was a time where like big hair was a weird, goofy thing. So that said, I think I'm gonna get out of here. I think I've talked for way too long about this movie because I think the movie's like an hour and 30 minutes, and I've gone over the hour mark. So I'm gonna get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody. Hopefully, I kind of covered everything. I like this movie. I enjoyed it. It was fun to watch, and it was also kind of fun to kind of see like where is this movie going, even though I didn't really like I just saw a scene of this but I didn't see the whole film, so I didn't know exactly how it went. But kind of when I went into like trailer of it, because I watched the trailer, I'm like, I know exactly how this movie's going. I know exactly how this is going to end up because I've seen exit extends. I've seen other kind of like, hey, do you think that this is a real thing or it's a video game? We're not sure. And there's a lot of movies that go into that, like the beta test movie or the whatever the video game movie uh, was to be that like the guy's like playing the video game, and all of a sudden he finds out that the guy that he's playing, the player he's playing, is actually a real person. It's kind of like gamer in a way. So with that said, I think I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.